Did you know that the Beatles almost called their album Revolver after Geography? Based on a bad pun Ringo made about the Rolling Stones album Aftermath. Other potential names were Beatles on Safari, Fat Man and Bobby, Four Sides of the Circle, and Abracadabra. But in the end, they went for Revolver because it was another bad pun. The Beatles loved wordplay, and so they named it Revolver based on what a record does. It revolves. The Beatles had very little control over their American album. The American record company would just choose songs they wanted to put on the album, they'd make new cover art, and they'd make their own title. Obviously, this frustrated the Beatles. When the American record company created the Beatles Yesterday and Today album, they requested a picture of all four Beatles from their UK management. What they received was a picture of all four Beatles in butcher smocks surrounded by baby doll parts and raw meat, representing the way the Beatles felt their albums had been butchered. 750,000 copies were made and distributed before they started getting complaints about the gory cover. So they recalled all the albums and they chose new cover art. But there was an entire batch that they just pasted the new cover art over the old. If you have a certain batch of the Beatles Yesterday and Today, you might have the Butcher album cover underneath. And that would be worth a hefty sum of money. Unfortunately, mine does not. First of all, thank you to this commenter for trying to politely correct me. I actually really appreciate that. Turns out though, this comment isn't totally right. However, my story wasn't totally right either. It's really hard to tell a full nuanced story in a minute, but I'm just gonna take this moment to sort of correct myself. The surrealist photographer Robert Whitaker originally did all those butcher pictures as a commentary on the adulation of the Beatles and how people idolize them, and he actually also put a lot of like weird subtle religious imagery in the pictures to compare them to like godlike deity. So he definitely had some weird ideas. However, the Beatles told everyone, including the American label company, that it was their commentary on the Vietnam War. Alan Livingston was the president of the American record label, and he said he spoke directly to Paul about the picture because he'd been so confused by it, and Paul said that they needed them to use it because it was their commentary on the war. John Lennon said in a press conference, if the public can accept something as cruel as the war, they can accept this cover. Turns out, as I said in my last video, the public could not accept it, and the whole album was recalled and given a new cover. But the common fan theory was and is that the Butcher album cover represented the way the Beatles felt their albums were being butchered by the American record label. And even though the Beatles never technically admitted to it, I think they knew what they were doing when they sent that picture to the American record label. They hated what the record label was doing to their albums, and so I just think that they probably had a little sneaky personal commentary there as well. But as always, feel free to let me know what you guys think. A man named Arthur Janov developed something he called scream therapy in the late 60s. It's when someone relives their childhood trauma and then is able to react fully and primally. He believed that if you were able to fully react and scream it out, that you could get closure. John Lennon was one of his more famous patients. John Lennon had the whole world to scream into. He wrote the song Help as a literal cry for help, but people obviously didn't get it. I can't imagine singing Please, Please Help Me while thousands of people danced. So he went to Dr. Arthur Janov and he relived his childhood and he screamed some more. I find this image really interesting. It's Edvard Munch's The Scream painting on an Arthur Janov book. After Edvard Munch painted The Scream, he said he had no hope of ever loving again. And John Lennon is quoted to have said that after scream therapy, he stopped believing in God. So I don't know, I believe in the importance of self-expression, but I don't think you can cure fear and pain with more fear and pain. Thank you for this comment. I liked this comment, and I did want to say that probably my last video seemed pretty like anti-Dr. Arthur Janov. I don't really have I think that he was actually really onto something. I think it's really important that we're allowed to feel the emotions and react fully to the trauma and not feel shame and guilt around those reactions and those emotions. And he offered a space for people to do that, to feel those things and react. But I think that's only important in as much as there's like a next step. Like that's the first step of healing. But if we stay in that place of looking to the past and like dredging up all those terrible feelings, that in itself is not enough. Like there has to be a next step of like building up hope and light and like purpose for your future, and replacing all those negative feelings with positive feelings. And it just kind of seemed like he was all about like bringing all those up as if after you did that they'd all like disappear and be gone after that, and I just don't think that's the way it works. Again, I think it was a first step, but mostly, I'm not a psychologist, these are just my thoughts. Mostly why I wanted to bring his name up is because he's really interestingly like talked about a lot in the music world. An example is Tears for Fears. They based their like band name off his theories, and a ton of his songs off of stuff they read in his books. And yeah, he was based in Hollywood, so a lot of actors and musicians interacted with him. So just an interesting person. I love the artwork of Carson Ellis. I've been obsessed with it for a while. Here are some examples of her work. Her art is folky and simple yet complex knit storytelling, much like the music of the Decemberists. The Decemberists are an American folk group led by lead singer Colin Meloy, and I've also loved them for an equally long time. Obviously their music, which is incredibly unique and full of stories and folklore, but also their overall aesthetic. Their band posters, album covers, and t-shirts are all just incredibly well done. Here is one of their t-shirts, which is like my favorite shirt I own. Turns out Carson Ellis is the artist behind it all. And what's even better is she's actually married to the lead singer of the Decemberists, Colin Meloy. With his great storytelling skills, he wrote a book and she illustrated it. It's called Wild